Really what I do is to give the most accurate and responsive financial information so that all parties involved can make the best creative decisions for the project. And I often tell people that regardless of whatever part of the industry you're in, you're going to be more successful if you can understand how a cost report affects your production.
Such smart advice. You're listening to The Other 50%, a herstory of Hollywood. I'm Julie Harris Walker. This is the podcast where we talk to successful women in entertainment and hear their stories. In this episode, I got to speak with Jennifer Freed. Jennifer is the founder, owner, president of Trevanna Post. Her firm does post-production accounting for films and television shows in both Los Angeles and New York. She started in production accounting and found her way in the post world while running around the Brill Building in New York. Yes, that Brill Building. Imagine all the musicians in Carole King's day and replace them with post-production people. She was in the thick of it. From there, she started her own business and grew it until she was bicoastal. She has a lot of great advice for anyone getting into the business. Among other things, know how to read the numbers even if you have no intention of getting near them. You can find us at theother50%.com to see bios, photos, my musings on the blog, the coffee cups, the t-shirts. You can find us on iTunes, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, all the places. And I have another podcast called The Other 50%, a herstory of tech. You can find it on iTunes or on the same website. And that is where I talk to successful women in tech and hear their stories. Okay, here's Jennifer. What is your job?
I am the owner of Trevanna Post, which is a post-production accounting firm for film and television production. We are the only bi-coastal post-accounting company. We started in New York and grew there and opened a branch in Los Angeles. So now we're bi-coastal.
How long have you had this business?
I've had this business for 21 years, which is exactly 3 months less than I've had my youngest child. I started it when he was 3 months old.
Oh my God.
Yeah. The whole thing of moving into post was a big transition after having children.
Okay, so what did you do before that?
So I started my career as a regular production accountant. I graduated from Stanford with a film degree and was kind of told by my advisor that I would never make it in Hollywood. What was so special about you? You should stay in San Francisco and make documentaries.
What?
It was incredibly disheartening because I'd loved my major. I loved film. I was so excited. And
wait, hold on. What was the basis for you'll never make it in Hollywood?
I hate to say that I was a blonde. She said, "You're a young blonde."
It was a woman said it to you?
A woman said it to me, that you won't have a shot.
Because you're a blonde girl. And you're not tough enough, or you're not going to be taken seriously?
Or I hadn't written an award-winning screenplay, or, I was 20 years old.
Well, what did you want to do in Hollywood?
I wasn't sure. So I thought that I had said at one point, well, I want to be a production manager or a production designer, kind of thinking they were the same thing. Because, back then there was no internet to look these things up.
Yeah.
We had a subscription to the Hollywood Reporter in our communications department, and I would go through the film listings and try to learn what the jobs were from that. Mm-hmm. But we hadn't really had any exposure to real life job descriptions of who everybody involved in it.
Yeah. But she was pretty sure that no matter what, you weren't going to make it in Hollywood.
She was. So of my whole department, which was about 30 people, only 6 people came to LA, and of them 3 left after a year.
Wow.
So now it's very different because now we've had a lot of distinguished alumni. But I had come out to Stanford to, study film, and it really wasn't what I thought it was going to be.
Okay, so what did you do then?
So my first job was spectacular stroke of luck. I moved to West Hollywood. I didn't know anybody. So I drove down in my car after graduation, lived by myself, and I had all of this yellow onion skin resume paper that I had sent my resume out to everyone in that Hollywood Reporter listing. And the 6th day after I graduated, the phone did ring. you don't know who I am, but you sent your resume to Roger Corman, and he told me to call you. We need a craft service person. Are you interested? I said, absolutely yes. Do you want me to come in and interview? And I'm already thinking, like, what am I going to wear? And yeah. He's like, no, you start tomorrow. So my very first job was first man in every morning with bagels from Cantor's and yogurt and coffee and everything that everybody wanted, you know, to give the crew breakfast, because they didn't cater breakfast. I was the caterer. And once a week, I baked homemade blueberry muffins. And that was kind of a big hit with the crew. So the mornings were fun.
And then you brought in lunch.
And then they catered lunch. If you took Hollywood Way as far as you can go up into the mountains, it was about 170 degrees.
Yeah.
It was so hot. It was this warehouse, and the production office was there, and the set, all in one space, which actually couldn't have been a better opportunity because everybody was right there.
Yeah.
I saw the prop guys, and they would say, I need you to go out and buy this for me, or whatever people needed, I was there. So a very smart woman who was the production accountant saw that after lunch, I didn't really have that much to do, and she brought me in to help her out.
Who was that?
Diane Mapcheek.
Oh my gosh.
She had me filing. She had me calling vendors and making payment plans for them. She had me looking up the Grips time card when he's complaining about overtime.
She put you to
Basically
work.
did everything. She was a one-person department. I mean, she's a dynamo, but she needed help, and she saw me, and she called me in, and so got to be that every day after lunch for about 5 hours, I would help her out. And we're still really good friends. She'll be the first person to admit it, though. What she did was came in one day and said, I got another job. I'm giving you 3 days of wrap, and then I'm leaving. As you know, you usually want 2, 3, 4 weeks of wrap on a show. But she got a great opportunity. She doesn't like rapping. So the producers looked around and they're like, what are we going to do? And they said, hey, you over there.
You've been doing accounting?
You've been doing it. And I said, absolutely not. I have not been doing it. But they said, but you know where everything is and you know who all the people are that are involved. So please join us and we will teach you accounting and you will teach our CFO, who's there to guarantee the bank loan, about filmmaking. And I said yes. And that's how I got into accounting.
Okay, so what happened next?
So I stayed with this company. It was kind of a Canon wannabe company, and they would make posters and take them to the film festivals, and whatever would sell, then they would go make it. So it was a great business model. So the next movie was a ninja movie.
Sure.
In Houston, Texas, and that was my first location experience.
So what was your job on that movie?
I was the assistant accountant. They had hired an accountant above me and sent me to work for him, but, you know, kind of make sure that everything was going well. And then when I came back, I would do post again for them. We came back, and the accountant said, oh, by the way, here is a box of unpaid bills that he had been keeping in his suitcase in his hotel room.
Oh, my God.
On top of that, the CFO said, what's wrong with this trial balance? There's all these negatives for the payroll taxes, because in those days we did our own payroll taxes.
Oh, my God.
With Cinecom software. And the guy had been afraid they were going to run out of money on location, so
he
withheld taxes and didn't pay them in. We went back and audited every single transaction on the movie. So I really learned from a very early age what was going to be needed at the end.
Yeah.
Approvals, coding, bank reconciliations, journals having the right backup, everything that they could need. And I wasn't 22 years old yet. So it was grad school. I am forever grateful, you know, that it kind of happened. The guy never did another movie.
I was going to ask you who it was, but maybe I won't.
No, you had never heard of him. He conveniently retired.
He washed out.
But for me, it was great, and I ended up staying with them for about 2 years.
Incredible.
And so then I was an accountant. I ended up being a production accountant for this company, and then I went freelance. And you know, so I would say it was about 9 years that I was an accountant. But I did feel that to really understand my job, I wanted to walk in somebody else's shoes. So I had one experience each. Once I was a production coordinator, and once I was a post-production supervisor. So to think that you know what somebody else's job is, you only know about 80% of it until you really do it yourself. So I had been an accountant for several years and said, you know what, I really need to see what it's like from the inside of the production office. And it was a great experience.
So you pitched that to someone and they said, sure?
I did.
Come on.
I did. It was Ginny Nugent.
How'd you get the post-supervisor job?
So when I started Trevanna, I had, moved into being a post accountant, and at one point kind of read one of those "What Color Is Your Parachute" books, but the advanced one is by Poe Bronson. I just felt that I wanted to do something. So a producer who I had worked with many, many times as their accountant said, "Who should we hire for a post supervisor?" And I said, "I think you should hire me." And she was shocked because definitely only seeing me in that one role. But luckily, she was a woman. She was very encouraging. And
she knew you could figure it out.
It took her 3 minutes to say, of course. It was great. And in post usually lasts 26 weeks. But this movie, it always extends. And this movie extended for 52 weeks.
Oh, so for a year.
So I was on one movie.
Okay, so let's back up to the beginning of that. Okay, so you did a bunch of movies.
Here in LA, I got to go on great location shows to Toronto. I got to go to Bangkok. I went to do a month in Malaysia once.
Oh, you get to travel the world.
It was really fun. I did a lot of films in the Carolinas. I did Prince of Tides. I did Last of the Mohicans. I worked in Pittsburgh on Striking Distance. And I had a great time. In all honesty, my marriage was a little shaky with all the traveling, because for 3 years in a row I traveled.
Yeah, that's hard.
And I had to make a decision about if we were really to continue this, what is the best route.
Did you have a mentor along the way?
I had the most magnificent mentor. As a matter of fact, I was thinking about her this morning. I almost started crying. She's since passed away. She was extremely tough, and if you worked really hard and made it onto her good side, you were just in this most special group. Her name was Ann Tate. She was the head of production finance at Columbia, and she really gave me my first chance at a studio movie. It was a recommendation, and she didn't know me from anybody except this one person. She called me in and sized me up and sent me off on my first interview. Well, I was woefully underqualified for this job, and she knew it. But I think she did it to show me a little humility, but also a little encouragement. It was for Rain Man. So it was like a road movie across the whole country with major stars, and 3 years of experience. There's no way. So the production manager kind of ate me for breakfast. Thanks for coming. I even was like,
see you in a few years.
There's sometimes when you say, yes, I can do this. This was not one of those times. I did not want to fail. So luckily she found a more reasonably sized movie for me to start with. And that really started me on, being able to work for not only Columbia, but the other studios. And it was her confidence in me. And I had to show it, especially on the second movie. I was in Canada, and unfortunately, it was my only bad experience with a woman production manager, kind of threatened by me or whatever the case may be, tried to get me fired. And Anne had to say, I need specific reasons why this is, and there weren't any. And so she said she stays, and she has my 100% confidence. You're going to make this work. And ultimately we did. And it was really uncomfortable for a few days, but it was just one of those kind of things where you grow your own confidence organically when somebody else gives you their vote of confidence. I would have done anything for her at that point.
Now explain what that working relationship is between a production accountant and the studio's production finance person.
So studio's production finance job is to hire production accountants. So a studio production finance executive has to know who's good, who's maybe good at certain types of movies or working with certain types of budgets or certain types of people, certain genres, and certain personalities. on top of who's available.
Yeah, it's a tricky balance.
It's a tricky balance. And so that's really a skill that they hone. And I think in that first situation, the producers felt that I was thrust upon them. And we had to grow and learn to trust each other.
Yeah, that's a hard position to start.
Yeah, yeah. But it worked out, and then, you know, I was able to continue to work for her for many years.
And did she actively mentor you while you were doing your job?
She did. I don't know how she had the time. She called me in, and she said, okay, you're going to Canada. She called me in, and she said, this is how you do intercompany transactions. This is how you do profit and loss. I really
took the time to teach you?
She absolutely did. I kept the charts for years. And so that was so meaningful to me that I kind of made a pact that I feel like I wanted to do that for other people going forward.
Yeah.
Yeah. So things went along. It was great. She sent me all over. And then I met the man who is now my husband, 27 years. We met and we were dating, and he got a job offer to move to New York. And I was extremely happy. I wanted to live here, and I wanted to, you know, have my career here. And I didn't really know what to do. So I went in and I met with my mentor, Anne, and said, Anne, what should I do? And she said, I worked my whole life. I didn't get married until I was 55 years old.
Wow.
So if you love this guy, not only will you guys be able to make it work, but I will help you. So move to New York, and I will introduce you to people, and we'll see what we can get started.
Oh, she was the best.
She was the best. She was absolutely the best, and it's not even over. So she did that for me. So we said, we'll go. We'll go for a year. If we don't like it, we'll come back.
Yeah.
And so we moved to New York, and it was so different than LA because it's a much smaller community. But it's fantastic that way because you know everybody. So we ended up staying there, but then in the early 90s, the studios boycotted New York because of high costs of unions. This was before tiers, if I'm not mistaken. Like, out of all of that boycotting and no movies being chosen to come there is where the East Coast Council got developed, and the whole idea of lower budget movies where you wouldn't have to pay the same rates. Right. Because back then it was very, very, very expensive. So we're in New York, we're having the boycott, no movies are coming there, and I'm having to go on location. Mm-hmm. And when I decided that I wanted to really make my marriage work and have children, I moved fast. I had 2 kids, they're 18 months apart.
Yeah.
And it was great. But after my second was born, I said, oh my gosh, what am I going to do now? And I called Anne, and she said, you're going to go back to work, and you're going to do post accounting on a film that we have. And I said, but I've never done post. I've always done principal photography. And she said, we're going to put you in the room with the best post supervisor in New York, and he will teach you, and you know enough about production that you can help clean up production, and he will teach you post, and you'll be doing us a big favor. And so once again,
she was the best thing that ever happened to you.
She was the best thing that ever happened. So once again, I was really lucky to get to be in a mentoring environment, not only with her, but with this post supervisor. So that was great. In those days, there was a company called Sound One, and it was in the Brill Building on Broadway and 49th Street, and it was where all of post-production was. So directors, editors, sound people, music editors, everybody just walked the halls constantly in between.
So the whole town was doing all their post
in one building, and that's where I was. It was
handy,
magnificent. I really learned everything because I was able to sit in there and listen to our post supervisor's name was Paul Levin, and he would be negotiating deals with crew. He would be working on revised schedules. He'd be talking to the producer about music costs. He would be approving payroll. You know, everything that he had to do, I was 3 feet away from him. And I was paying attention, and it occurred to me that it wasn't really a full-time job to work on one movie, that I could do more than one movie, and that if I had an assistant, I could probably do even more. And I knew there were post-production accounting companies in California, but there were none in New York, because it was still a pretty small community, especially in post. Even some things would shoot in New York, but go back to Los Angeles to do post. But there was no post-production in the city at the time, and some of the smaller companies were growing bigger then. We had the old Miramax. Mm-hmm. We had the old Focus, which was a good machine.
Were they sending all their post-accounting to LA while their post was happening in New York?
They were.
Yeah,
and so the studios said, oh my gosh, if we had somebody that was here with feet on the ground,
we'd give you all the business.
It was really great. So obviously Columbia was the first project, but then my next two movies were Miramax, and then we just did all these combinations of independent films and studio films that were posting in New York.
So then at what point did you make that an actual company?
1 year. After about 1 year, we decided to make it a company, and Trevanna is the combination of my two children's names, Trevor and Savannah. And then we grew as the post-production industry in New York grew.
So as you were building this business and doing the work, because I imagine the first several years you were hands-on doing the work, how were you also managing the rest of your life and raising children and having a family? How did you manage all that?
I managed it because the great luck of my very first nanny. I know that not everyone has that same luck, but my very first nanny stayed with us for 10 years.
Oh, lucky.
And she was just an amazing, amazing woman, Carmen Hunt. And she came Monday morning and lived in till Friday night. And so it was the best of both worlds because I felt very confident that everything was being taken care of because, you know, she slept in. And on the weekends, we had the house back to ourselves.
Yeah.
It was great. And the fact that everything was so stable and that she was there with us for so long was a gift.
Oh, for sure.
It was really a gift.
And what does your husband do?
My husband is a concert promoter, and he moved to New York to work for one concert promoter, which lasted a year, and then he went to work for the competing concert promoter, where he worked for a long time until the whole concert promotion industry changed. And he decided to have his own company too. And it's called Trevanna Entertainment. So,
oh my God, it's a family empire.
I was like, who do you have to sleep with to get permission for that name? So his business is primarily in New York.
You had that business in New York for many years, but we're talking in LA. So what happened?
So we grew the business in New York at an unbelievably great pace. It was just right. It grew proportionate to the amount of business that we could sustain, and we moved when it got bigger. Then the New York production tax credit came into play, which was fabulous for everyone. And about a year after that happened, we moved to a new location and doubled our size.
Wow.
So I had almost all women.
How many?
The whole time. We started with 2. For a long time, there were the 4 of us. And by the time we opened the LA office in New York, we had about 10 women. I could not imagine Trevanna without the amazing women who have been with me. And many of them have been with me for over 10 years.
Wow.
I have Yana Lehman, who is my work soul sister. I mean, we're not even exactly alike, but we complement each other so well, and we just have the same vision for the company. And I have the brilliant Dee Shuka, who is my right hand here in Los Angeles. And then I have Diana and Liz and Kelsey and Annie and Melissa and Kathy. I mean, it's just an amazing group. And
did you leave anyone out?
Michelle Sarama, who was my very first employee. She worked with me for over 20 years until she retired last summer.
Oh my gosh, you had a whole career with you.
A whole career with me. And she was an amazing woman who had no experience in the movie business when she started, and by the end she keyed all of our big, enormous Sony and Warner Brothers movies, and she deserved to retire. It was a great run for her.
That is wonderful. Now, did you consciously set up having this woman-driven business surrounded by women? Did you think about how do you manage as a woman? Did you think about all that, or did you just do it?
I thought about it every day, because the reason that I wanted to stay in post, yes, my first experience had been good, but the reason I continued with it is because what an amazing opportunity to stay as a working professional in the business, in the center of it all. Mm. And then to work for yourself, you could work as much or as little as you wanted to. And then that was attractive to the other people that came to work for me as well.
Yeah.
Because everybody was in different stages in their lives. Some were very young and they were dating, or they wanted to go to the gym, or they were writers and they would write at night or on the weekends, or they had babies themselves. We've had lots of babies during the course of Trevanna. It was a flexible enough environment that everybody found that they could find a good balance.
So it's not a 16-hour-a-day grind, and you're still in there making movies.
Still in there making movies.
So then, at what point did you open your LA office?
We had the blessing of a lot of LA companies who would either use us in New York or say, I wish you were here in LA. We would use you then. And it happened enough times that it kind of started a little seed. But the main reason that it happened was when Oprah decided to stop her television show and start what she called her next chapter. And I said, I really want to have my next chapter too. So when people would say, why are you opening the LA office? I was like, it's time for Jennifer's next chapter.
Because Oprah.
Because of Oprah. It just all kind of happened. And, you know, a lot of our longtime friends were so excited, but Andy Isaacs from Summit, she was a big champion of ours. I have to just give her so much credit. We loved working with the Summit people, and so when we decided to open our office here, we opened up 4 minutes away from them so that we would be nearby.
How long after that did they get purchased?
It was about a year. So when I decided to open the office, I just flew back and forth all the time. And I asked 2 of my New York employees if they would come and work at the LA office. And I had no idea what they would say. I had no idea if they would both say no, if one would say yes, the other would say no.
Because you know New Yorkers are supposed to hate California.
Hate California. They both said yes. So it was great. So we were able to open the branch with it really feeling like Trevanna, with our culture, and not just somebody that we hired out here.
Not starting over.
And so for 2 years, I flew back and forth about once a month.
How old were your kids at this point?
My kids were in high school. And they kind of just got used to it. Like, okay, it's Monday, Mom's leaving, she'll be back on Friday, once a month. And then I decided that I really ultimately did want to live out here, and started planting the seeds. And 10 days after my youngest graduated from high school, we moved.
You did it.
We did it.
So now how have you grown and expanded your business since you've come here?
In New York, we do a lot of the studios films that edit in New York, but they don't have somebody. Out here, the studios have in-house post-production accountants, many of whom we're friends with. So our business out here is a lot more indie-driven, but as we all know, a lot of these indies are big companies that produce a lot of movies. So films that the public perceives as studio movies are really produced independently. So those are our clients here. And we have worked really hard to build that base and really spend a good portion of our time working with the same clients over and over and watching their success. You know, as they grow, we grow along with them.
Do you mentor other people?
So as the owner of the company, I walk a really fine line between marketing and customer retention. But the main thing that I do is work with our people who work here. So I mentor my own people at my company every day. And the people that I find have the most success and are happiest working here are people who are super curious and people who want to come in and learn something new every day. And by doing post, we have to learn everything. We have to know everything about production. We have to know everything about post. We have to know everything about delivery. We have to know about productions that have shot all over the United States. All the incentives, all the vendors, all the complications, all over the world. We have a lot of films that shoot internationally but come back here to post. So there's a lot to learn.
And post is changing every
Changes
day.
all the time. So not only the technical aspects of it We brought in one of our post supervisors to give a class a few
you
months
did?
ago, to kind of walk through the process because it's so different.
Hey, it's not film anymore, and it's not this anymore, and now it's, I don't even know what.
Right, and if you're tracking POs and paying bills for different processes at the lab, it really helps if you understand what they are. So every day is kind of like mentoring to make sure that everybody here is on top of their game and learning something new, and we're developing our people because we take a lot of young people. Mm-hmm. We take a lot of people who are interested in production accounting, but maybe don't know a lot about it. Maybe they've taken a class in the software, and it's a big universe. It's a lot of things to learn. Personally, I work with a lot of students from Stanford in entertainment who are doing exactly what I did. They moved down to LA and they want to talk to people. And whether or not they're interested in accounting or not, it doesn't matter, because as we know, every good producer, production executive, even director has to really understand accounting to make a good project.
Yeah.
Really what I do is to give the most accurate and responsive financial information so that all parties involved can make the best creative decisions for the project. And I often tell people that regardless of whatever part of the industry you're in, you're going to be more successful if you can understand how a cost report affects your production.
Such smart advice.
Really what I do, part of post-accounting, is that we have to know every software that's out there. Mm-hmm. We work with all the payroll services, and it's great, but it's not proprietary software, anything, that we do ourselves. So that has never been anything that we've been involved with. We inherit what the production accountant had for the show.
Next, by the time it comes to you, you can't say, hey, I want to use this software.
Right. They ended on transaction 5,000. I started on 5,001. But one problem that we had noticed throughout the years is the way that we budget, track, and deliver music licenses was archaic. So any project that uses music, there's two kinds. You can have a composer who writes and records original score, or you can license music. And that's all the songs that you hear in a film.
They have to pay for.
They have to pay for. And they have to pay for the sync rights, and they have to pay for the master rights. Mm-hmm. So they have to pay for the people who wrote it, and then they have to pay for the people who perform it. And an average movie is going to have anywhere from 10 to 20 songs in it. And so even if there was only one payment to be made for sync and master for each one,
it's a lot
but
of
usually it's shared. 3 people wrote the song, so you have to divide it up.
And are you writing 3 different checks, or are you writing
absolutely
into one?
Writing 3 different checks.
Okay.
So I have one movie now that has 42 songs, and it's 102 licenses.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's a lot to keep track of.
It's a lot to keep track of, and people are keeping track of it in a hybrid sense where they're making Excel spreadsheets that one lawyer might have it this way, one lawyer might have it another way. But if you update it, you have to then recirculate it to everybody, and anyone who's put their own notes on it,
and they all come in at different times.
They all
bills
come in
at
at
different times.
There's a lot of moving parts, and for delivery on a film, you have to prove that you have legally and financially secured the rights, because nobody wants a lien put on the movie. You used my song.
Right, that's bad.
You didn't get permission. So when you're delivering a negative pickup to a studio, which means, they just bought the film from you and you need to give them not only the releasable element, but all the contractual paperwork that goes along with it, they're not going to pay you until you have proven you have all the contractual and financial obligations met. Mm-hmm. So it can be an incredibly frantic time to try to pay out all of these payments. And then there can be studios who make their own films who aren't so worried about it. I'm paying music licenses now on films that have been in the theaters 6 months ago. So it gets complicated with the production company, with the post supervisors, with the music supervisors, with the clearance attorneys, with the post accountants. So I've been thinking about it for a really long time, but this year I decided to move forward and create my own software that would maybe solve for this problem. And it's been a really fun journey because it was really out of my wheelhouse.
Yeah, how did you figure out how to make software?
So I interviewed several different developers, developing teams. Some people were single people, some were big companies. I asked everyone who I thought might know somebody if they could give me a good referral, and I met with about half a dozen teams until I finally picked the team that I went with. And it was a lot of collaboration, of problem solving, and trying to create a good user experience so that we're going to try to change the way the workflow goes to make it easier for everybody. And, you know, we've been doing it this way for a long time, and now all of a sudden there's going to be a new platform for that.
That's industry changing.
It can be. We did a lot of brainstorming sessions. We would bring in the developer and meet with everyone at Trevanna, and he would say, so tell me what doesn't work. You know,
we all have that
frustrating
list.
it was. We all have that list. And then he would say, so tell me what you do like about the way it works now. Pin drop. like nothing was good.
It's just torture.
It's just torture. So he's been really great about hearing these concepts and figuring out a way that we can make everything from the beginning of the workflow, when you're first, you know, putting in your ideas for the songs, to getting all the paperwork, who needs to sign this, who needs to write this check, who needs to save this here, and then everything ends up in one project's files, and at the end of the movie, you click one button and it exports every document for the show. By song, every contract, invoice, and proof of payment for every sync and master license for every song.
So at its core, it's an end-to-end music license tracking system that's collaborative.
Perfect. Yeah.
And archival.
Yes.
So is it the kind of thing where you, at the accounting firm, can look and say, oh, here are the invoices I have, here's how much I paid, but then an attorney at a studio could also look in the same program and see what contracts you have and what you've paid?
Absolutely can.
And each side could make changes?
Each side can attach documents. Each side can request actions to be done. Each side can update statuses. Some people will be view only.
That is brilliant. What kind of feedback
It's brand new. Such good feedback. Really, we didn't get any negative feedback. One of them was like, this is going to make my job so much easier. She just saw the efficiencies in it. She loved the way it looked. Everything was great. And
she heard the angels sing.
She did, you know, because you don't even need to write things on Post-its anymore. It's so easy to put all the information right into the software while you're on the phone with BMI. You know, they give you a quote, you can put it right in. So the only things have actually been those like icing on a cake kind of things, like, oh, I wish I could do that. I wish I could do just that.
Or if you could also send me a birthday card.
We're very, very excited. It's called Trevanna Tracks.
That was my next question.
Yeah, kind of the dual name on tracks there, with tracking and soundtracks.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
That's very exciting. Tell me, if you were to describe the culture of your company, how would you describe it?
I feel that the culture here at Trevanna is really one of collaboration. Our jobs are to provide the best financial information cheerfully, quickly, accurately, and as intuitively as possible so that the whole filmmaking team knows exactly where they are and that they can move forward in post-production to make the best film. When you think about a budget, you have a budget at the beginning and it gets spent during principal photography. And at the end, you have what's left. You're either over budget or under budget by the end of the shoot, and your post budget and schedule is going to be affected by that. You're going to have savings, or you're going to have been over, or you're going to have spent all your contingency. So every movie that we get, we have to ascertain what the status is. We are always trying to be there with an answer when the call comes.
I like the intuitively part of that. You're trying to think ahead as to what the questions might be and what some solutions might be.
Right. Well, if you decide this, then this, and this are also going to be possibilities, or these are going to happen, or you're going to jump a tier, or you're going to, jeopardize the credit, or there's often also so many different ways you can do something that sometimes we become advisors. You know, well, yes, I've shot in Budapest before, and I know they might have told you that you'll get the tax credit back here, but we know that it really takes this long. You know, little things. So part of the joy that we have with our job is when people that we've worked with before, actually they call us before they even start shooting. Tell us about how New Mexico's been going. Tell us about Pittsburgh. Who should we use for our CPA? You know, instead of waiting till it comes to us in post.
Yeah, that kind of advice is invaluable. And you have the perspective of seeing everybody's movies everywhere.
Yeah.
And how they all work.
Yeah.
Are you a success?
I feel pretty successful. I feel happy to have stayed doing what I've done for so long, but I also feel like I learn something new all the time. And I have seen so many changes in the industry and have adapted as we moved on. And I have been able to raise my kids. Now they're both graduated from college, you know, on their way to becoming adults, and, you know, have gotten to work on over 300 movies.
Jeez.
So I've met thousands and thousands of people, yet still have been able to carve out personal and family time to an extent that I may or may not have had I worked for another company.
Are you a badass?
I don't think I'm a badass. I think I have very strong expectations of people, very high expectations, yet I feel like I'm more of a cheerleader. I just want to encourage good work because I get hired. It's not the same like to be a badass.
What does badass mean to you? What's the connotation of it?
So I think badass means to me somebody who is aggressively giving their point of view and kind of the my way or the highway because they deserve to be there, because they know what they're doing and they expect everybody to fall in line. I do like that about the word, but I think for me, because I want people to work for me, I want people to hire our company, I try to encourage people to have that same excellence, but just in a compassionate way.
What advice would you give to young women coming up? The next young blonde girl coming out of Stanford who wants to go to Hollywood, what would you tell her?
I like to think of this thing called my hammock speech, which is if you could be sitting on your proverbial hammock and you weren't listening to what your mother said or your siblings or your teachers or your partner, just what was in your heart. Where did you want to see yourself? Not only like in 5 years and 10 years, where do you want to see yourself Thursday afternoon at 3 o'clock? When you're that young, sometimes you don't know. But if you have any inkling, there's so many people who want to help you, but you need to say, help me help you. And so if somebody can find it in their heart what their goal really is, I think they can find people who will want to help them succeed and to not feel like they have to do it on their own, because people get a lot of joy in helping people find their footing because people have done it for us. They really do. I mean, it's one thing to be really proud of the cost report that you did that day, but
I aced that cost report.
But really, when you've been able to network and introduce somebody to somebody else and have it be a win-win situation, that's what it's about for me. So I would say to that young girl, don't be afraid to ask for help, ask for informational interviews, ask for advice. And people most of the time I've found in this town are generous with that and actually enjoy it. And I just met a blonde from Stanford who just graduated.
What did you tell her?
And she is killing it. She's a day player PA on a TV show. And the days that they don't call her in, she's interning for a lovely producer here in town. And so she's like, every day I'm just getting up and talking to people and asking questions. And I know she's going to be a success. And it makes me so happy.
She's doing it. She's got the right attitude.
She is.
How do you see the state of women in the business right now?
Well, I think that there's been so much focus on the women directors. A lot of publicity about that, and it's really, really important. You know, I'm not a director, but as the projects that we're going to work on here, or the projects that I just want to go see as a film lover, that is just a critical, pivotal swing that needs to happen. I'm kind of hopeful about all the other positions. I look around and I see a lot of strong, powerful women. That makes me feel encouraged. But I feel like a lot of the development decisions and financing decisions at the very top, I guess, are still ridiculously outnumbered, by men.
Do you have any ideas of how that gets broken up?
It's getting women in the green lighting positions who are going to green light projects that have women involved, whether the woman is the producer, director, writer, stories about women, and with the financial part of it. We rarely deal with women who are dealing on that part of it. They have to want to be interested in it. I don't know if it's just something that's not that appealing, that just seems too ridiculously cliche to imagine. But the people putting together loans and sales packaging and things like that, if more women are in that might encourage, more, women involved with the projects.
Yeah. What do you think's in it for men to advocate for women?
I just wish that it's not, that it becomes that it's not an issue, to even think, oh, it's a man, or oh, it's a woman. Oh, it's just a smart person. Yeah. It's just a person who has a lot to bring to the table. They have great ideas. They have great experience. They have a lot of forward-thinking momentum. They are conscientious. They're honest. We can trust them with our plan. And it really shouldn't matter if it's a man or a woman. It seems
so obvious and so easy, and we're still so far away from it.
I work with 2 fabulous women producers who are partners, and they wake up every morning and fight the fight. They do independent projects of a, smaller nature, a lot of women involved, a lot of female-driven stories, but they're just not getting the financing to get the bigger budget shows. And they're so smart. So I don't really know what this obstacle is.
Yeah, it's a bit of a mystery.
It's funny, when I was in New York, we would work with certain directors over and over and over again. And I started to think of who they were, and they were almost all men. Mm-hmm. M. Night, the Coen brothers, Ang Lee, Jonathan Demme, Marty Scorsese, Darren Aronofsky, Wes Anderson, Spike Lee. I'm like, oh my God, there's not a woman here.
No. I mean, those guys are all great.
They're all great. But,
where's Mira?
Well, and so, Mira, of course, and sadly, Nora Ephron. But to have 2 decades worth of films and so few females
what's up with
is
that?
Really sad.
What are you most proud of?
Earlier in our career, I realized that there were 2 jobs that weren't covered by benefits, which was basically craft service people and accountants. Mm-hmm. And this was in New York. So in the late 90s, Hope Shaw, who was another accountant, and I worked for 2 years to organize accountants into Local 161. It was an amazing 2 years because we had to reach out to both sides. We had to reach out to the accountants who, believe it or not, were not all in favor of it, and to get the IA to want to recognize us and, bring us in, because at that point 161 was only script supervisors and production coordinators. And it was a big lobbying effort. I mean, I remember having meetings. I remember having big meetings and small meetings. I remember meeting with people who would say, I don't need to join the union because I'm already successful and I already get covered by non-affiliate. And we would have these heated political conversations like, it's not just about you. It's about the people coming up under you. It's about standing up for rates and working conditions and having enough people in the department and having a community. And to this day, some people still didn't join, but primarily now, most every accountant is covered on the whole East Coast, from Florida to Maine, because of the lobbying efforts that we did.
Wow, that's huge.
And I was so proud of that because it really did, I think, make the field more encouraging for people to come in. You know, they wouldn't be the only person working on the film that didn't have benefits.
So I guess of health benefits, things like
pension, health and welfare, and also brings you together for meetings to be able to talk about trends and things that are going on. If there are questionable environmental situations on a job, you have somebody that you can talk to. So you're just not all alone.
There's advocacy.
There's advocacy, and I will say that the reason that the studios didn't want to participate with this is because they see accountants as on their side. And what's going to happen if a show goes on strike? Is your accounting team walking off and then you can't even pull it together? Right. So it's where are the loyalties? Yet that isn't a good enough reason to not extend benefits to the people who are watching the financial health of your project, right? So that was just a triumph, really, I think. And we also were able to grow from a really pretty small number of people to hundreds and hundreds of members now. And then I served on the board as a trustee through the period where our health plans merged in with the MPI out here, which made it so much better for everyone because the more members that belong, the better health plan you can get. So it increased the kind of health care coverage that everyone in New York had because we now had the Hollywood style, and it was a boon to them too because they were able to bring in so many more members.
The best insurance in the world.
Everybody won, so it was really great. And now that I've moved out here, I, sadly had to give up my membership in 161, but I'm now on the board of trustees for our local here.
So you are very active and involved.
I am very active and involved, and everyone at my company is a union member. But we see ourselves as an extension of the production accounting team from principal. So if they're covered during the shoot, we should be covered during post. And that makes us more expensive, but I have fought for it, and
you get what
will
you
continue
pay for
to fight, and you get what you pay for. But it helps me attract good people because if they're working in this field, they want to be in the MPI.
And you can make a career of it that way.
Absolutely. So the second proud moment.
Oh my God, you have
There's two. I have two. Involved a lot of handshaking with politicians. But I was part of the initial group that started lobbying Albany for the first ever post-production only tax credit in New York. So what that means is we had enjoyed tremendous success with the tax incentive for productions that shot in New York. But not every movie shoots in New York. No Country for Old Men. I mean, sometimes you just can't shoot in New York.
Yeah.
The script doesn't call for it. We had so much talent in New York and so many great companies and facilities and so much to offer for post that we just felt if we could encourage a few more people to come, it would really pay off and be able to grow the industry. So what that meant was traveling up to Albany and meeting with representatives and all parts of, congressmen, senators. We met Governor Cuomo and his staff several times, educating them about post-production, how it's great paying jobs, there's so much room for entry, all the technology that's involved, and that with the tax credit, you don't pay out in front. It's like people will come and then you pay it back. So the gamble is not that great. And Governor Cuomo saw that and supported it completely. And the first year when we passed, we were the only positive new piece of legislation to be passed in that session.
Incredible.
And it started where we had less than 10 projects.
How
the
big
first
is the
year.
incentive pool?
The incentive pool is carved out of the production pool, but it's big. It's never been exceeded. And it has grown enormously. And it's been so good for New York, and it's one of the proudest things that the government has done to increase business and increase jobs, increase infrastructure growth. We have hard numbers on that, And now we have hundreds of projects that shoot all over the country, all over the world, but come to New York to do their post-production, that they were not coming before we were able to pass the incentive.
Incredible.
We made a post-New York alliance, which started out with just the initial 14 companies, and now we have over 500 members. Every type of technical company, from sound, labs, visual effects, to individual members, and, who get together all in support of the industry.
Well, you should be proud of that.
Yeah.
I know accountants gripe about the 871 of it all. They love the benefits. Is there ever any movement towards helping set rates and overtime and things like that for accountants?
Really good question. And I think that most of us say we don't even really want that. We haven't pushed the local to negotiate rates for us because there's such a wide variety of experience. And there's people who work on budget ranges of all different things. And so pretty much the salary negotiations are still led by the key accountant. There are scale rates, and so anything over that is fine. Just as an aside, the whole mood at the union has increased to the good 1,000%. I think that there's been a lot of changes in the administration and the mood of the members, and it's actually a pretty happy place now.
Well, I love it that you have your hands in so many things and are just going for it. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much for doing this. I think it's great for everyone to hear everyone else's stories. I've loved listening to them, and I hope you keep doing it.
Well, thank you for telling us your story.
Yay!
You've been listening to The Other 50%, A Herstory of Hollywood. I'm Julie Harris Walker. I'd like to thank Jennifer Freed for telling her story. And special thanks to Jonathan Lucas for editing, Jay Rowe, Danny Rothner, Allison McQuaid for the music. Please find us on iTunes and subscribe and leave a review. And of course, on our website, theother50%.com, all spelled out, for added features, bios of our guests, pictures, merchandise, etc. You can also follow us on Facebook and on Twitter at other50% spelled out, and Instagram at other50% podcast. And don't forget to check out The Other 50%, A History of Tech. Thanks for listening. See you next time.